Planning Commission meeting for Columbus of February 6th, 2019 to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're gonna skip items 3, 4, and 5 until we have a planning commission chairperson. But I just want to take a moment to do some introductions. So I'm sure all of you know who I am, but I don't know if the audience does. But my name is Elizabeth Morsco. I'm the city administrator here. And tonight we have a planning commission that not everyone knows each other, because we've had some nominations and approvals over the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to start off with all the way to the right, and we're going to start off with city staff. So Rochelle Bush is here tonight with us, and she's our planning commission secretary, and she does our planning commission minutes along with. She's also an administrative technician in our office and processes and helps us with building permits and anything else that comes across the counter. So if you do need help, she's always willing to help on Wednesdays and Fridays. Merritt, to her, right, is with us, and she's been with us since January, and she's our interim city planner. So for those of you who've been with us prior to that, Dean Johnson, he was our city planner for lots of years. He retired in December. So Merritt has some pretty big shoes to fill on the interim, as Dean was a big presence in our community and processed a lot of applications. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit further after we get through the rest, so they can tell a little background. So Jody, why don't you introduce yourselves, and then we'll go back to the mayor and we'll continue from there.
Okay, I'm Jody Krebs, and I've been on the Planning Commission for 2 terms now. I'm going on my 3rd, and have loved working in the community, helping see the growth and development and the ideals of all the residents in the community. We've lived here for 28 years and raised all our children here and continue to enjoy our little piece of heaven here.
My name is Ron Hanegraaff. I've been a resident in Columbus for 40 years. I raised my son here in Columbus, and I was on the Planning Commission in 1998 in that era, and I think I came on when Dean Johnson came on, or in that era, and I seen that there was a need for somebody on the Planning Commission, so I applied and thought I'd get back in. I'm a retired police officer from the city of Forest Lake. I did 30 years there. And like I said, I've been a resident here for 40 years and enjoy the community. I've owned 2 houses here, and that's how much I love it. So I'll stay here forever, I guess.
Thank you. I'm Pam Wolowski, and I am just starting my 3rd term. I've lived up here for 13 years, and when I became an empty nester is when I wanted to get involved in local government, and it has been interesting. I've learned a lot from this experience, and I very much enjoy it.
Thanks, Pam. The mayor here, Jesse Preiner, is here this evening with us, and he's going to do an introduction address in a few minutes. But to start off the meeting, we're gonna look at number 6, which is our organizational discussion. And I'll lead the discussion for a few minutes here until you nominate a Planning Commission chairperson. Just a little overview and background on Planning Commission chairperson. Our chairperson at the last meeting, Garth Sternberg, resigned, so he was our chairperson for several years. And in his particular case, the council accepted his resignation, so that's why we're without a chairperson at this time. Because normally you would have like the, you know what I mean, kind of passing the batons and such, but we're a little short, as you can tell. We have 2 vacancies amongst our planning commission. But the three of you, we appreciate you coming and being here because you make up a quorum and we can still have a meeting, so it's all good. So with that, during our organizational process, I included in your packet the bylaws for the planning commission, and in there, it says that you will select one of your members as a chairperson for 1 year, and whoever you choose does need the approval of the city council. And then he will preside over all the meetings. It also says the commission will appoint amongst its members a vice chairperson to act in the chairperson's absence. In this particular case, for as long as I've been here, the planning commission has opted for a rotating vice chairperson, which means each person gets an opportunity to be the chairperson should the chairperson be absent, and they're assigned specific months. So they know if the chairperson isn't there, that they will chair the meeting. And I'm pretty sure almost everyone has gotten an opportunity at one point or another to chair the meeting. So they have that opportunity to see if it's an experience they like or not. So that is an option that's still open to you, or if you should select amongst yourselves that you don't want to do a rotating vice chair, you can simply nominate a vice chair, and then they'll take on that role for 1 year. So the process that we do for chairperson is nominations. So you can nominate yourself, you can nominate another person, you get a second, and then when all the nominations are on the table, then you can vote. So if there's one person or many persons that are nominated, you would take each one and then vote on that. So I will open up the floor for nominations for chairperson.
I would nominate myself for chair.
So we have a nomination for Jody Krebs as chairperson. Other nominations?
I'm going to nominate Ron. I'd like to have Ron chair.
So we have a second nomination for Ron Hanegraaff for Planning Commission Chair. Other nominations? Okay, so hearing that there's no other nominations, then we'll take the first nomination. So Jesse, I know I have no standing here, so I can't make a motion. So someone will have to make a motion to accept the nomination, but it can't be me.
Do we have to have a second?
Yes. So one of the three of you have to act on the nominees. So there'll be, a motion on someone will make a motion on the floor to nominate, and then there'll be a second, and if it passes, otherwise it doesn't pass, and then you'll act on the second nomination if the first one doesn't pass. But someone has to make a motion other than me.
So I can entertain a motion that we seat Ron Hanegraaff as the chair.
So you had two nominations on the floor. Jody's was the first, and Ron's was the second.
So do we take Jody's first?
That was the first nomination.
So we have a nomination on the floor for Chair of the Planning Commission, Jody Krebs. Is there a second?
I'd second it.
Jesse can't make the motion. One of the three. I'm pretty sure one of the three that have to make the motion, unless you're thinking of something different. That's the only thing I don't know.
No, I don't know this is the first time I've done this.
Yeah.
So explain it again, please.
So I think the planning commission amongst yourselves have to make a motion, because you're not on the planning commission anymore. You used to be. And I think they have to have a because it says in the bylaws that the planning commission shall select one of its members as a chairperson. So you have two nominations, and I think amongst the three of you, you have to nominate. You have to make the motion, second, vote on each one.
All right.
And
so
if-
Jody has made the motion, correct?
Yes.
And now we have to have a second?
And if you fail to get a second, then the motion fails.
Okay, so do we have do I ask this?
You can.
Do we have a second? Anybody? Okay, hearing none, the motion fails. And now our second nomination was from Pam Wolowski for Ron. So now
someone has to make a motion, so Pam, if you,
you've made the motion.
and now someone has to second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second for Ron Hanegraaff as chair of the Planning Commission. Do we have a vote?
And now they have to vote.
So can we have a vote? Pam,
And I think we start, where do we?
or Jody?
I'll say aye.
I'm sorry, what?
I said aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Motion carries. So the planning commission is self-elected Ron Hanegraaff as a chairperson for this meeting. It will not become final until the city council accepts that recommendation as chairperson. But for this meeting, you'll sit as chairperson. So, at this point,
Excuse me, so when does this go to the council? Next week?
this will go to February 13th.
Thank you. So now we have to choose a vice chair or do the rotating.
Correct.
So what does everybody think? We have done the rotating for, ever since I was here. Or we can do somebody selected especially to be the vice chair. Anybody have any reason to change it?
I don't.
Ron,
I don't see any reason to change it.
Jody?
Oh, I feel the rotation would be good.
So we have to have a vote?
They do. Someone has to make a motion that
Okay.
you're going to have a rotating vice chair.
I'd make the motion that we make a rotating vice chair for this year.
I'll second that.
Vote aye.
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 Okay, so that concludes the organizational discussion. We can resume the agenda back up to number 3, and Ron, you can take on the meeting at this point. And so number 3 is the motion for approval of the agenda.
The agenda for tonight?
For tonight, yes.
Oh, so I have to make a motion, or I have to ask somebody for a motion?
As the chairperson, you're going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move to approve.
Second.
At this point, it's all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Motion carried.
Next.
Now where do we go?
Number 4.
Number 4. Do we have a motion to approve the public hearing minutes? Number 4.
So move to approve.
Second.
I have a question. Since I wasn't on the planning commission for that hearing, do I have a vote in this? Or do I abstain?
If you felt that, our city attorney said at the last meeting that if you weren't at the meeting, you know what I mean, he felt that you should abstain. I'm not necessarily sure that that's an absolute requirement, but that's what he noted. And in this particular case, Jody and Pam were present at that meeting, so you could pass or abstain because you weren't present, and it would still pass because it's a majority of those present, so it will pass.
Okay.
Well, I should say that. I hope it will pass.
Okay, so now we ask for a vote.
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
And the motion passed. Go on to item number 5, to approve the planning commission meeting minutes.
So move to approve.
Second.
We have a vote.
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
Okay, now we're down to item number 7.
And you're going to turn the floor over to the mayor.
Mayor?
I just want a little bit of a short. First of all, to thank everybody who is going to spend quite a bit of time and energy and a lot of time thinking about the upcoming issues they're going to be happening in Columbus. Because like, if you were here for the work session, Elizabeth said there's a lot of things coming up that are going to require quite a bit of a discussion to make sure that we come to the best conclusions for Columbus. And one thing I know, there's new people, if you have questions, don't feel shy about asking for answers. Elizabeth knows most answers, or she can tell you where to find them. And what the main mission of the Planning Commission is to discuss ordinances, understand the ordinances, and discuss projects and situations that come up before you so that you can pass your discussions and decisions up to the city council to help us make the best decisions that are the best for the city. And as Elizabeth goes through this, you'll see a couple of spots here. She'll go through evaluating applications on page 4, which is pretty important. It really explains what the role of the Planning Commission is. There's some rules of procedure. It all seems a little bit overwhelming at first when you see it, but if you use common sense, it all makes sense. So again, thank you for the work you're going to do. And I'll let Elizabeth continue back with number 6 on the organizational discussion.
So at this time, what I'd like, Merritt, if you can just introduce yourself to the Planning Commission and audience, just a little bit, you know what I mean, background on your planning, and then we'll move on to number 8 for discussion on the Met Council letter.
Hi, thank you very much. Glad to be here and helping out as best I can as interim city planner. My background, both my degrees are in planning, so I started very young. My first jobs were working for counties, Dakota County and Washington County. That was before I went back to grad school to get my master's in planning. And then I came back, I worked for the city of Brooklyn Park. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then had a little stint helping start up a nonprofit to support small independent businesses, and then went to work for the city of St. Paul full-time as a planner. I was there for 11 years. And during that time, kind of did everything: zoning case reviews in front of Planning Commission, rewriting parts of the ordinance, doing code updates, doing small area plans, and oversaw a large-scale redevelopment project for a decade. And I left there just a little less than a year and a half ago, did a consulting job for a little bit for the state, and then started at TKDA as a planner in September. So I'm happy to be here. Some of my other clients right now are the City of Scandia, Baytown Township, Stillwater Township, Eureka Township, and a couple of kind of development projects in the cities.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I thought we would do tonight is really kind of look at an overview. So I don't have any applications for tonight, but I will give you a preview and indicate to you that I do have 2 applications for February 20th. Both of them are interim use permits, and one of the other reasons why I've asked Merritt to be here tonight is because I had a short discussion with council members about residential zone businesses, and we thought it would be a really good idea to have more of a worksheet checklist, because we have found that there are several people that, whether they want to read the code or not, or whether they don't understand, exactly what to put down. So we've kind of struggled with this, that maybe we had to articulate questions rather than formulating questions and trying to answer things that were in the code. And so Merritt will take just a brief journey through her worksheets. And I thought it would be a good precursor, because we know we're going to process 2 of these applications at the very next meeting. The public hearing notices have already been put in the paper, so we know we're going to have those applications. But before we get there, number 8 is, I just need to find my agenda here. Number 8 is the comp plan letter. We received an incomplete letter from Met Council indicating that our comp plan didn't quite meet all the requirements that they felt was appropriate. And so and really this is more of an introduction for you so that you understand that we sent our comp plan out to the surrounding communities, comments came back. When that happened, we submitted to Met Council in latter December, and now they have taken a preliminary review. This letter is the outcome of that review. When I received the letter, I read through it, I called Hyla, and I said, I did distribute the letter to our engineer and also back to Hyla and our attorney, just so that everybody knew what we were getting back. And so we decided that we would ask Hyla to kind of evaluate how much were technical things, like this diagram wasn't right, or something that she could fix relatively, easy. And so what you have in your agenda packet is the actual letter from Met Council, and then her response as to what needs to happen. And so I think when you start looking at her responses, it kind of shows you that there's a lot of technical things. You know what I mean? It's more about charts and updating things, or words weren't right. But then there's a little part of it that we have some work to do. And so this was just an introduction to kind of have you familiar with what we're going to do, because we have a little bit more work to do. And the idea tonight was to make sure that you were familiar with the letter, familiar with what Hyla's memo and responses were, because this same letter will be presented to the city council, and then at their direction, we'll either have workshops together and jointly address the policy issues that we have to address for resubmittal. We may have a workshop, it might be at a planning commission meeting or such. That hasn't been set up yet, and neither has the direction as to what direction we should take. But again, wanted to let all of you know that we're not quite done yet. So, comments back after reading the letter? Hyla's comments?
I think just one of the comments, I think, was that Mid-Council has been a little more stringent with each city. It looked like a lot of cities got this incomplete letter. And I think they're looking for a little more depth in what answers they're getting, not such a, like we did kind of an overlay on many of our answers, and I think they're looking for more depth.
I think the staff agreed that they're looking for a little bit more detail. Okay. Anything else to add, Ron?
I have nothing. I read over it. Guess you have to look at the whole thing, the whole picture first.
Did Hyla give any estimate for how long she anticipated it might take to bring the city through the discussions on some of the bigger items? Or is she going to kind of put together a plan for how that happens, or will you do that?
So she put together the memo on, the answers, and she had indicated to me that no one anticipates an incomplete letter, but obviously you anticipate having to do some follow-up. So she'd indicated to me that this is part of, she had given us, a charge of what she thought it was going to be for our plan. There is no extra charge for this because it's kind of encompassing of what it is. In other words, if it wasn't right, they anticipated making the things right. So she anticipated 1 or 2 more meetings, with all of you to kind of take you through and finish up the comp plan. Now, if you decide that you want to rewrite a whole part, I'm sure that's probably not, in her, in what she's budgeted. But from what she's told me, 1 or 2 meetings that she would finish up and then resubmit. So as far as that goes, I think she has an idea of what needs to happen, based on the letter and based on, apparently in her office, it's not the only comp plan they did. And I'm not saying we got a form letter, but I think there were a lot of common incompletenesses in many plans, let's just say. So I think they have all looked at those sorts of things. So, having said that, I think at this point, she was more than willing to come back, more than willing to take us through the more technical things and answer questions. And if the council wants us to have, you know, a workshop or two, then she was more than happy to participate. Okay, anything else? Pam, you have anything else to add?
Are we just going to kind of isolate all the policy stuff? And, I mean, so like you said, there's a lot of clerical in here. They're looking for more depth. How long do we have to isolate all the policy decisions that are, there's a few in here. What kind of time frame are we looking at?
You know, when I asked Hyla, like, you know, do we have like 30 days or, I mean, generally like, you know what I mean? And she really didn't say that for incompleteness, I don't think there's really a you know what I mean, a time period like, oh, we have to get it back in 2 weeks. I do think, from what she told me, there was a, you know, a response letter that she would draft back to them saying, yes, we've received the letter and, you know, we're going to work on it and such. And I don't think she's looking at an extended period of time, but it really depends, I think, on the council as to when they, you know, when we want to set up a worksheet, when specifically we'll talk about this, whether they're going to delegate all of the policy issues to the planning commission and then they'll see it, or whether they want joint meetings to jointly discuss it. But I did ask Kyla to isolate the more technical things versus the policy things. And she said that in her answers, she's kind of done that, but not in detail.
I think it's not broad. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Looking at the, one other policy thing, or the order, I should say, that I forgot to mention, that I just realized is one of your last sheets. One of the other things that we do, Ron, for your benefit, is one of the planning commission members is assigned a council meeting, and then they report to the council as to what happened at the planning commission. And the new schedule is in your agenda packet, and I'm not sure who's up. Oh, it's you, okay. It's Pam, okay. So, so Pam, you'll be at the meeting, so you'll know what the kind of the direction they want us to take as far as planning commission and such, so. Because they'll have the same exact letter and response letter from Hyla in their packet. Okay. So now we're, Ron, we're up to number 9. So number 9 is the interim use permit worksheets that Merit put together in order to help us guide our discussion and our processing of the interim use permits that are coming through. So Merit, if you would be able to just take them through, you know what I mean, your logic on how you set up these sheets, I think that would help them, because my goal in this is when they get their packet next week, that, you know what I mean, that they'll use this, you know what I mean, to guide their questions and their review process of those 2 applications.
Yep. All right. In the code describes interim use permits for residential zone businesses, what those are, what's required of them, what needs to be in the application. The goal with this was to turn it into a very kind of customer-friendly version. So if they need to come in for an interim use permit, this could be handed as part of that application packet. So it just starts with the very basic description. Again, this is all based on the code. What is a residential zone business? With a few bullet points. And it states this is a use that you need an interim use permit for in order to operate it. It then goes to applying for the interim use permit, just some check boxes. What are the things that you need to have as part of that application? And then when you turn to the next page, the rest of these letters, it's a lot of them, but it's all of the information that's required to be provided by the applicant for an interim use permit. But they're phrased, instead of how they're phrased in the code, they're asked as questions. So they're just much more intuitive to fill out. So for instance, is the principal use of the property residential and owner occupied? So one of the requirements for an IUP in a residential zone business is that they be on property that's owner occupied. So it really just tries to lay out the information they need to provide in a very straightforward manner by posing it as a question. Anything so far? It's hopefully pretty straightforward. Then it just wraps up on the next page. It just says what the review process is once they submit the application. You know, you submit it to the city, you have a filing fee. The Planning Commission holds a public hearing. The applicant's encouraged to come to that, and then it would go forward as a recommendation to City Council. And then the end just includes the code citations, word for word, as they would be for reference for the person. So trying to keep it just very straightforward. Any questions or?
Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Kind of just check it off and go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So what we were hoping was that, because we had 2 applications, you know what I mean, at our next meeting, that if you used this as a guide as you look through the applications, and Merritt will have a planning report too.
Yeah.
So it's not that we won't have a planning report, but to kind of think about if you were the applicant, is it intuitive? Is it, you know, does it make sense? Did they already answer the question? What questions didn't they answer? Was there holes in there? Was there other information you thought you might want? So that we can tweak them. You know what I mean? If you want more information, or you're looking, because what we'll do from that point, because what you're looking at is a draft, from there, then we'll create supplemental question, you know, like another sheet. So if you're applying for a residential business, you're gonna get this sheet, and then if there's other questions that you wanted answered, then we'll make sure that we can legally ask it under our current code. And then if we are missing something, like, you know, we should really be asking this, and it's not there, then we can make some suggestions for editing, or, you know what I mean, or changing the code, amending the code.
Yeah, and there are always questions you can ask, even if they're not in the code during the application process. The question is whether the answer would be something that would be a basis for a recommendation by the Planning Commission from a legal perspective, and that's where the attorney can be helpful if there are questions about that.
Is an applicant getting all these pages? Or is this just for, I mean, they're going to get this checklist page, but will they be getting paid all of this? Or is this more for us?
I think it's a good question. I generally find there are some applicants that would rather just have the questions and not look at the code because it's just kind of noise. It's not always clear to them. And there are other applicants that want to read it word for word and kind of interpret it for themselves. So
Okay.
I think it's a judgment call. I mean, you wouldn't have to put it on, and then if they want it, you know, they could be provided that as well, so.
I think once you have the application in front of you,
Yeah.
it will be more intuitive as to whether these are really the questions you want to
Right.
ask for an interim use permit versus, because this is what people will come to the counter, because right now, what they get is the first page and that checklist with the boxes, and it simply says name, address, and phone number, legal description, description of use, zoning code, And then, you know, please give us a narrative statement. And basically what they'll say is noise, no, odor, no. They'll give you these like one-word answers, and that really isn't the question. The question is, as a result of your business, is there going to be noise? You know what I mean? And so if you're, you know what I mean, if you operate, you know, a welder, you know what I mean, you're going to create some noise. So I think when intuitively, when people look at this, they want to just say, they want to give you one-word answers, and it's like, well, it's not that simple. You know what I mean? You have to give us a little bit more. So we thought by asking questions, and maybe in the narratives, these are not yes or no questions, that maybe they would give us a little bit more information. And you'll see the application, the first one is for a pet grooming business, and that's literally that's the narrative. Odor, no. Noise, no. Well, I'm like, there's barking dogs, how can you say no? But maybe her dogs don't make noise when they're groomed, I don't know. But again, the first thing that will come to my mind is barking dogs, you know what I mean? So what do you do when the dogs start barking? You know, because our ordinance says after 10 minutes, you know what I mean, that's a public nuisance. So that would be like questions like I would ask for zoning. But I think the applicant generally, they might not think of that. So by asking the questions, we were trying to prompt, you know what I mean, the answers as to what will you do?
More discussion.
You know what I mean, for it. So that's kind of where I was going with because the A through H is what we already have, you know what I mean, in a checklist, and they kind of take it quite literally when they're filling out the application. All right. So if you have no other questions on the checklist, agenda packets come out, agenda packets come out on Friday. Be surprised when you see the sheriff's car come in your driveway, because we have a CSO that works for us on Fridays, and he delivers the packets. So I'm sure you'll have interesting conversations, because these are young people who are aspiring to be police officers, and I'm sure they'll have plenty of questions for you if they know your background.
I met him on Friday. I
Oh,
thought he
you
was
did?
trying to serve papers. And I didn't answer the door. No, he's a nice young man, yeah.
They're rotated through, so there are several CSOs that work here, so you may have the same one, or you may have a new one, so.
But we can pick this packet up if we want on Friday around here. I mean, can I come in and pick it up?
If you choose, it would be more towards 3 or 4 in the afternoon that they tend to be ready, but yes, you could.
Okay. Not that I don't want a deputy pulling in my yard, but just around the area.
Yeah. Okay, so the next on the agenda is the city administrator's report. I have a couple things, really just for information purposes. The first is Government Training Service, which is what GTS stands for. Each year has planning commission opportunities or planning commissioner opportunities for classes. I've attended many of them. I think they're great classes. I think I would encourage anyone who wants to attend. However, my recommendation is not all that you need. We do have to request from the council whether or not they feel that it's appropriate, and we've never had a council that has not allowed planning commission members to go to classes. So I don't think this new council will be any different. So if you read through, I know there's different opportunities or different dates and half classes and such. The ones that are in your packet are the ones that are being offered. If you think you want that opportunity, then we have to let Pam know so she can go before the council and indicate to them that, yes, you would like to go to class, or you pass.
Elizabeth, do you have any experience with the virtual attendance options?
You know, I've always attended these personally, but I know that it's the newest thing, you know, that we take training online and you're able, you know, I mean, you're able to do that. I don't know that you get as much out of it, but again, you get familiar with it. I think most of you, or some of you, have taken the land training class that's online from GTS. And I think it was informative, but it's not the classroom. It's just not the same, but still informative. So I think they're both good.
I've gone a couple times and I would say go. I mean, you're going to get way more perspective and input from other people who are all different walks of it. I mean, just listening to it was really informative to be in the class.
Do they offer the same classes every year? Is that?
Every year, there's different classes. I noticed this one is the role as the planning commission, but there's land planning basics 1, 2, and 3, I think, or they used to call it beginner, intermediate, and advanced. There's comprehensive plan classes. So at different times, there will be different ones that are offered. I noticed this one is your role as the planning commissioner. It's at WSB, so I think they're sponsoring the class. But I've seen all different ones over the year, and we've traveled as a group even up to St. Cloud and gone to classes, and I don't remember what that one was called, but every one of them that I've been to has offered, and I've lots of opportunities to socialize with others who are experiencing the same thing, but also learning things. I mean, just hearing what other communities. I think what's fun is hearing that they have the same rooster or barking dogs in other communities that you do, no matter where you are in Minnesota. It's kind of fun to hear that you're not the only one in that boat. So,
The one I went to was called Land Use Planning Workshop.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they had city administrators, they had attorneys. I mean, it was just all sorts of informative
Yeah.
things.
And when is the deadline for signing up for this?
I don't remember seeing a deadline in here.
There's a May 16th, the March 28th, February 20th is almost here. So we would have time if somebody chose to go,
Yeah.
not at the next meeting, but at the next city council meeting. So think about it, everybody, and let us know.
The last thing I just wanted to point out to you, just as an FYI, there are some of us who have worked with wetlands and wetland regulations for a long time. And there are a variety of different things that you have to learn when you work with wetlands. But as you work with the different sets of rules, you quickly find out that some have tools that work really great and others that don't. And one of those tools is, as I gave you the article, was the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over wetlands at the federal level, and it's basically they have jurisdiction over public waterways or navigable waterways. And one of the frustrations we had here in Columbus was there was a national wetland map, you know what I mean, that people used, and if you have boots on ground and had a delineation, you had more specific information. And there were guidelines. There was 9 different types of wetlands, and you had them typed, and you were able to articulate what those regulations were. And then if you went to the state level and you went to the DNR, if those wetlands had a P on them and they were protected wetlands, again, you had a map and there was a P on them. Well, when you got to the Army Corps of Engineers, there was no map. There was no guidance as to whether or not you needed a permit from them. So I would sit at the counter and say, you know what? Here's your guideline for this one, here's your guideline for this one, and you know what? You're just gonna have to call them. And we discovered that there was no rhyme or reason when someone needed a permit and when they didn't. And And there was one gentleman, he was, well, what I thought was in the middle of nowhere. And here the Army Corps said, yep, we have jurisdiction. I'm like, well, where's the waterway? Because he's between Lexington Avenue and Broadway. I'm like, where's the river here? Because, so I was having a real hard time kind of conveying these rules when I had no map and no guidance, and just simply call this number and see if you need a permit kind of thing. Well, the good news is, and that's what this article says, after a lot of lobbying with a lot of friends and a lot of road trips, they're gonna come out with a map after all of these years. So a little success will go a long way when you have a community that's 65% open water of wetland. This is a big deal. And I can't believe they did it, but you know what? A little bit of success. So, I put that in there, for you, just to pass along, that sometimes our hard work, we do have some success. So, Ron, as we got down to 11, at each of our meetings, we give an opportunity to each planning commission member to give a report or to offer suggestions and such, and now we're at that point.
So we are.
Yes,
So do I direct it then? Do I ask?
you do.
Okay, so I asked Jody, do you have anything you'd like to add or state?
I would. I would like to ask if the city council would consider us using our off meetings as workshops, as they've now developed their own workshops. I know we come when we have hearings, but if we could have those workshops to really work on ordinance work, that would be much appreciated.
So you're talking about the meetings where we have no items on, to use those as workshops?
Yes.
Okay.
On a regular scheduled meeting?
Right, it would be a
Oh.
regular scheduled meeting, but oftentimes they get canceled, and then we don't convey for
Oh,
a couple of weeks, and then it's like, okay.
I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I understand, yeah. Good idea. Pam, do you have it? Is that all?
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
I would also mirror that. In the interviewing process, I talked about that, and I'd like to add on to that, that we have a good, structure of like, what are we gonna tackle in each workshop, and start pecking away at our list, and we used to kind of have a list where we would work down, and then we got so busy with permits and things, and where we were actually meeting because there was a lot of things on the agenda. So yeah, I'd like to see that as well. And that's all I have.
I don't have nothing, but I learned a lot. I think it's going to be a learning process, but I agree fully, because I remember years ago being on the planning commission, and you just get a call and say, we're not having one this month or this week, and you go on, and all of a sudden you come in and something happened. Yeah. I agree fully. It'd be a great idea, Jody. Where do we go now?
Number 12, looks
Number 12?
like I'm attending the city council meeting. So really what I'd be reporting is the chair, nomination of the chair.
Yep.
And just kind of the checklist. They'll have all this?
They'll have the minutes, because Rochelle will have those for them. So they will have the minutes. And I think it's the chairperson, the fact that you chose a rotating vice chair.
Okay.
And you're right, talking about the residential zone business checklist. Oh, and training.
I just making sure that we were kind of all over the board here, just want to make sure I don't miss anything. And then, I'm sorry, what the last thing you said,
The training.
the training. Okay. Got it.
Now, Elizabeth, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Is it possible that we would receive the minutes from the workshop so that we know kind of what might be coming to us?
The workshop
council
from-
workshop?
The council, Jessie, I talked to Jessie, she took notes, and she said she pretty much got everything from the meeting. It'll be just a little bit different format in that she instead of recreating recreating what people said. She did bullets. So it's a little bit different format than, because it's really notes, it's not minutes from the workshop. And she thinks those will come out really quick because they were more of like a bullet form than otherwise she summarized them and she redrafts them. So in this case, it'll just be like to-do items, what's going to be on the agenda, more than sentences.
Right, and if we could get that included in our packet for just
Okay.
a topic, workshop topic outlines so that we kind of know and keep in pace with the city council.
So I just want to make sure I got this right. So you're looking at the notes, or do you want, because the workshop agendas are emailed, so do you want to be on the email list for the agenda?
I think we want to see, the outline of minutes, whatever she takes.
Okay.
So that we know what they're talking about and kind of what a consensus there, or what
Okay.
avenue they may be going down, so that we can support that and keep the progress moving and be abreast of what their intent is.
Okay.
Well, I have one quick question, if you don't mind. Did you guys decide if you're going to try to workshop, like today you indicated you're going to do it once a month? Is it going to be like the first Wednesday of the month, or is it going to have you guys honed in on?
So at the organizational meeting, it was indicated that it would be the first Wednesday of the month starting at 4. And I understood that tonight that it will be more of a 2-hour session more than a 3-hour session. We kind of packed this one up. And so it'll be a smidge shorter.
Good.
But at the next meeting, and this was my fault, but, so I thought that I could just, from the organizational meeting, just from the direction, I could just publish the meeting schedule. And as I was drafting the notes, I happened to be talking to Jake, and I said, and Jake, just so you know, can you just look over the verbiage? I just want to make sure that I have it right. And he emails me back and says, so I just have 2 questions for you. Was this schedule adopted by the council, or did you just develop it? And I was like, well, yes, I put their words into a chart, but no, they didn't see it. So he said, no, you have to make the first one a special meeting, which is why the notice was just 1. But it is true, in December of each year, I come up with a meeting schedule for the following year. The council does approve it, and then it gets published. So he told me to follow the same schedule. So they'll see the schedule next week, which I have it in a chart. They'll adopt it, I'll publish it, and then we'll put it on the website. So we're just going to follow that same scenario. So yes, you'll see it in a chart, and it'll be on the website.
Okay, so the schedule will be on the website.
And
Yes.
the first Wednesday of each month.
And
It
the
is
first
good,
Wednesday
okay,
of each month, yeah.
So your workshops will be the first Wednesday of each month.
So do we jump to item 13?
We're at 13 now, yes.
This shouldn't be too hard. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Oh, tied.
It's all 3 of us. Meeting adjourned.